It is Friday. Awesome. We're glad you're closing out the week with CNN Student News. From the CNN Center, I'm Carl Azus. First up, a farewell address from President George W. Bush as he prepares to leave the post he has held for 8 years. The presidential farewell speech is a tradition that dates back to the country's first president. Last night, the 43rd made his final address to the nation from the White House. President Bush reflected on his time in office and his vision for the future of America. Samantha Hayes has the details.
In his final address to the nation, President Bush reflected on the event that defined his presidency.
As the years passed, most Americans were able to return to life much as it had been before 9/11. But I never did. Every morning, I received a briefing on the threats to our nation. I vowed to do everything in my power to keep us safe.
After 9/11 and when he took office for a second term in 2005, the public saw President Bush as strong and decisive, even if they disagreed with his actions. He now leaves his job as commander-in-chief with only about 1 in 4 Americans approving of the job he's done. President Bush himself says he has some regrets.
Like all who have held this office before me, I have experienced setbacks. And there are things I would do differently if given the chance. Yet I've always acted with the best interests of our country in mind.
The president warned that terrorism is still the country's greatest threat and defended his worldview.
I've often spoken to you about good and evil, and this has made some uncomfortable. But good and evil are present in this world, and between the two, there can be no compromise.
And before closing, looked ahead to the new administration.
God bless this House and our next president.
President Bush will spend this weekend at Camp David before his term ends Tuesday afternoon with the swearing in of Barack Obama. For CNN Student News, I'm Samantha Hayes.
Miraculous would be a good word to describe what happened yesterday when an airliner went into the Hudson River.
There's a couple ladies got some bad leg injuries and everything.
I got it all, but
all in all, I give my hats off to the pilot.
Hitting a bird or flock of them just after takeoff, the pilot that he mentioned, C.B. Sully Sullenberger of U.S. Airways Flight 1549, softly ditched the aircraft into the river. Every single one of the 150-plus people aboard survived, Coast Guard and nearby boats rescuing them from the frigid waters.
A word to the wise. Culmination. A final stage, ending, or close.
The controversy surrounding Roland Burris appears to have reached its culmination as he was sworn into the U.S. Senate yesterday as the junior senator from Illinois. Of course, Burris was picked to fill that seat by the state's embattled Governor Rod Blagojevich. Initially, Senate Democrats said they wouldn't seat anyone appointed by the governor who's facing corruption charges in his home state.
Today's shout-out goes out to Mr. Jaber's 9th grade civics classes at Fond du Lac High School in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Who was the youngest man to win the Nobel Peace Prize? Was it Jimmy Carter, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., or the Dalai Lama? You've got 3 seconds. Go! "35-year-old Martin Luther King Jr. won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. That's your answer, and that's your shout-out.
Dr. King was awarded that prize for his work with the civil rights movement. He famously offered his vision of an America where people are judged by their character rather than their skin color. As we get ready to celebrate the federal holiday that honors the civil rights icon, John Zarella explores what Dr. King might say about today's America.
The road to the White House brings us to Memphis, Tennessee, and the National Civil Rights Museum and the Lorraine Motel. This is the balcony where Dr. King stood when he was assassinated. If he were still with us, what might he say about the Obama presidency?
Memphis, the Lorraine Motel. In the parking lot below room 306, 2 vintage Cadillacs. History's detail preserved. This is where Martin Luther King Jr. died, 1968.
It's not so important that Martin Luther King Jr. died here, is that he lived here, and he changed Memphis, he changed America, and he did change the world.
Gwen Harmon is a director at the National Civil Rights Museum, of which the Lorraine is a part.
Just pretend like you're in an art gallery.
Since Barack Obama's victory, Harmon has sensed a change. in those who come here.
So we see curiosity, we see pride, we see a sense of hope now. The groups are younger, they're bigger. We also see more diversity.
And all of this would have pleased Dr. King.
He had great faith in the fairness and decency of the American people.
Clarence Jones. For 8 years until King died, Jones was his confidant, speechwriter, attorney. About an African-American president?
What he would say, however long it takes, in some reasonable period of time, not an eternity, but in some reasonable period of time, there will be, I'm sure he would have said that, there will.
And more.
He would say still so much to do. As long as a child goes to bed hungry, we have work to do.
The museum tells the story of those who paved the way in civil and human rights. There's a bus from the 1955 Montgomery boycotts.
We leave the bus and we come to the next period of time, right?
1960, this is actually my favorite exhibit. This shows the power of networking as far as a movement.
Is everybody ready? Yeah! All right.
Today, students from Arlington Elementary are here.
That's the room that Dr. King was in. He'd probably feel very proud. I think that he would feel good because he would know that he helped change.
Change that might not have taken place, Harmon and Jones say, if not for those like Dr. King, who paved the way with their blood and tears.
Many of those who were with the civil rights movement say that what Barack Obama has accomplished is not dissimilar to what Dr. King did. Both men built a movement based in no small part on substantial support from white America.
We will be off the air on Monday for Martin Luther King Day. We put together a one-sheet that details the legacy of Dr. King and a learning activity that challenges you to compare his vision to present-day America. You'll find both at cnnstudentnews.com. Texting. A lot of us do it, but how much? There's one study that says the average monthly text total for 13 to 17-year-olds is about 1,700 texts. But one teen texter topped that number by more than 10,000. Jamie Chambers of affiliate KTLA in California adds up the bill.
You hear people say that they die without their ability to text, but after meeting this teenage multitasker, I'm afraid I'm starting to believe them. Raina Hardesty is 13. She loves to act, go to the mall, and text her fingers off. Her last bill showed 14,528 texts in 1 month. Yeah, that number is insane.
I just knew that I texted a lot because it was winter break, and I knew I was texting way more than I usually do, but I didn't think it was going to be like this humongous. Like I thought 9,000, but then it was 14,000, so I was like, what?
She didn't even have a BlackBerry. It was all done from a no-frills, bare-bones, handout free cell phone. Her parents were baffled.
I was appalled on one level and also amazed, like, well, how can this be humanly possible? So I got to admit, there was sort of underneath this all a little sense of, a little bit of, wow. I was a little proud that she could do that.
Greg says tonight the texting has been slowed down to some degree, but we'll see about that next month. So that means Raina was sending or receiving a text every 2 minutes, every waking hour in the day. That's not including eating, talking on the phone, or brushing her teeth. That's 484 texts a day. So what are these 13-year-old girls texting about?
The latest reason why you're mad at your family, or like, my brother's annoying me and stuff like that.
So if a stranger took your phone and threw it out the window, what would happen?
I would just like pounce and then just like, what the heck was that for? And just like totally like attack.
You'd fight.
Yeah.
If Raina was a regular paying customer, those texts could have cost nearly $3,000. Lucky for her, she was on the unlimited plan.
Well, before we go, a small look at a monumental moment. The country's capital is preparing for President-elect Obama to step up to the podium. All 2 inches of him. This miniature first family is taking part in its own inauguration, one made entirely out of Legos. Master builders are recreating the event at California's Legoland, complete with famous monuments and massive crowds. The Capitol building alone took 1,200 hours and more than 380,000 bricks to build. But man, it makes for one heck of a block party. Oh yeah! Well, we will be off on Monday for MLK. We will see you again on Tuesday. Hope you enjoy the weekend. For CNN Student News, I'm Carl Azus.